The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to Marketing with Purpose, a segment of the Bliss Business Podcast where we explore what it really takes for marketing leaders to create impact that goes beyond the numbers. I'm Tulio, and in each episode, we sit down with experts to explore their leadership approach and strategies that drive performance and also resonate with their audience. Together, we'll dive into what's working, what's not, and how purpose and empathy can transform the way brands connect with people. So let's get started. Today, I'm excited to welcome Christine Perkett. She is the CEO and co-founder of the NOVA Method. Christine is an enterprise narrative strategist and trusted C-suite advisor with more than 2 decades of experience helping organizations navigate rapid growth, market transitions, and periods of intense scrutiny. A 4-time founder, agency CEO, corporate board director, and technology entrepreneur, she brings a unique ability to translate complex technical and data-driven ideas into clear human stories that build trust with customers, investors, and other key audiences. Her work has spanned technology, healthcare, finance, and nonprofits, and she's been recognized by organizations including Forrester, Forbes, and the American Business Awards. Now we're going to explore customer connection in a data-driven world. Almost sounds like opposite ends of the same spectrum. Right? And I'm excited to dive into it because we want to look at how brands can use data and technology without losing the human connection that makes people trust them. That's the key thing to everything, right? So welcome, Christine. Before we dive in, I'd love to hear, why was customer connection in a data-driven world the topic you chose to explore with us today? And why is that important, like right now?
Well, I'm going to say, first of all, thank you for having me. And thank you for the nice introduction. But I'm going to say the word that's on everyone's lips these days, which is, I think AI makes it even more important. We've been so data-driven the last decade or 15 years. Marketers are really about, how do I prove my worth? What is the data telling us? And I think with the advent of AI, that human connection is back to being at the top of the list and back to being important. We're seeing that not only in the way that marketers and communications leaders analyze their programs, but also in the programs that they run. So we're seeing a lot of face-to-face events. People want to connect with people. There's already a little bit of exhaustion with the AI slop and marketing and brands, and even people churning out content, which is maybe a little bit less thoughtful. It's faster, it's more efficient, but it tends to be less thoughtful. So that connection, that customer connection, is something that is at the top of the priority list for us, for our clients. And it's funny because you had said earlier the word resonant or resonance, and that is one of our key ethos at the NOVA Method, which is resonant communications.
Very nice. Now, look, let's face it, leaders or business leaders are often pulled between near-term results and building a long-term brand that also generates near-term results in the near future, right? So, but how do you ensure the strategy stays aligned with the company's growth goals? And where do you find the biggest friction points in making that happen in your experience?
Well, I think that from a marketing PR perspective, it's a good reminder for the organization to look at marketing not just as a campaign or data or an introduction for sales, but really that it's aligned with whatever the business problem is. And as you say, the growth trajectory. What is the business problem the company has now that's blocking them from growing to where they want to be? And that's where marketing should start from, not from what channels are we using or what's our content going to look like. So that's the first thing. I think you build more resonant communications when you understand what problem you're trying to solve, especially internally. And then therefore externally, your messages and your content and your campaigns are more effective to helping you reach that growth. And I forgot the second part of it.
Where do you find the biggest friction points in making that happen? Like, where do you bump into the friction to make that alignment happen?
Traditionally, I would say the biggest friction points that we see are between marketing and sales. I know that sounds probably very old school, but it still happens. Marketing has, again, a certain set of campaigns, data, information that they want to communicate externally. And if sales isn't aligned with that information when they meet with the prospect, there's a disconnect. And I actually wrote, I think maybe last week or the week before, about how that disconnect, or that connection rather, is even more important across all of the departments within an organization because of AI and because of the AI visibility that's happening. Generative engine optimization is pulling from all of the signals out there, all of the third parties talking about your brand. It's not just your content anymore. It's not just your website that's telling the rest of the world who you are. It's third parties. And so every department, from sales to customer service to marketing to communications to the executive suite, and what they're saying in a town hall or in a media interview, has to align, because that disconnection will be more stark than ever thanks to this AI visibility that we have.
It's so true. We at the agency here at Zero Company will often have this conversation with clients. What you promising the market has to align with how you operate. If you are about integrity and trust, and internally there's toxicity, that's a disconnect. People will eventually find out. You can't hide that anymore. It's going to bubble up. And so it's very interesting to hear what you're saying, because sometimes the friction is just too many silos, not enough alignment.
And every department is there to reach their goal, right? And sometimes they forget the bigger goal of what the company is trying to accomplish as a whole. And that's another big disconnect that we see. I've been working with sales technology, sales engineers, sales representatives for a very long time. And I still see even a disconnect between the salesperson and the sales engineer that comes in to really close the technical part of the deal. There's even disconnect sometime in the messaging there, and that frustrates prospects, and it could prevent them from becoming a buyer if those messages are too far apart.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's very real. That authenticity, that alignment is key, because as you had mentioned before, everything is about establishing authority today, which is what AI is doing, is actually looking for those signals that establish authority.
Right.
So what you say, the consistency of what you say across the board plays into that. Now,
authenticity. That authenticity is a big
Absolutely. There is no creative campaign that can overcome a disconnect between what you're promising and how you operate. They have to be aligned. And now, under the perfect world where we have good alignment and we've got purposeful, empathetic approach to everything we're doing, something happens, right? High stakes situation comes up, brand crisis, market downturn. We don't always control these things, right? So how do you go about maintaining a sense of purpose and empathy in those environments while having to make quick strategic decisions? What's the advice you give clients?
Well, I think purpose is something that always has to be there. And if it is there and it is clear, you will have that when a crisis comes up or pressure comes up. So remembering your purpose as an operating principle is the first step. In a crisis, we often focus on three questions because the pressure's on, right? So what do we know about what happened? Who is affected? And what do they need from us right now? And if you can answer that last question, especially, and be authentic about what you can give them and what you cannot, you will be able to hopefully navigate the situation in a clear, purposeful, and effective way versus just responding to the loudest criticism or the loudest voices. And that's hard to do. I'm not saying it's easy at all. But if you remember who's affected and what they need from you right now, and maintain your purpose in general. Maybe you made a mistake. Maybe there was something negative that happened, but it shouldn't in general change the company's purpose and objective and who the company is. So holding on to that and coming from a place of authenticity in those communications is key. And then making sure that you are communicating. The worst thing that a company can do is not say anything, because then you're letting someone else write the script and the narrative, right?
Yeah.
You're in bigger trouble.
And that goes in hand with being authentic. It's like, it's actually aligns very closely to the advice I give my kids. It's like when people are rude to you, don't change who you are because they are different. If someone's mean to you, you shouldn't change who you are just to respond to them, right?
Yeah.
Who they are is their issue, but that shouldn't change who you are. And businesses, even if you're going through a difficulty, don't change who you are because you have to react, right? I love that. Now, let's talk about expansion because every business likes to grow and expand. So now you got the pressure of growing with purpose, expanding, sometimes dealing with things you didn't plan for. So when launching a new product or entering a new market, what's been your most effective way to align sales, product, customer success teams, marketing, and where does that alignment usually tend to break down? We touched on this a little bit, but I'd like to expand beyond just sales and marketing because that's kind of an obvious one, but there's also sometimes misalignment in other areas. We touched on it a little bit. So I'm curious to hear, especially when launching into new markets, where does that breakdown or alignment tend to break down in your experience? What should people look out for?
Well, I mean, we start with asking a head of each department or division involved a question. It's the same question, but they need to answer it separately. Mm-hmm. And honestly, most of the time, they are not as aligned as you would hope. So we do that to show them where the gaps are and that we can't go to market until these gaps are cleared inside, and creating one shared definition of success. So everyone, again, kind of thinks of in silos of their personal responsibility, what their metrics will look like, what their accomplishments need to be, so the annual review looks great, right? But and that's fine, that's important too. But that should all come to one shared definition of success for this launch, whether it's a new product, especially if it's a new company, whether it's a new service. So the misalignment often comes just because everyone's thinking about their own responsibility and not the greater good of what this launch is for in regard to the company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's the way the compensation is misaligned too, which drives that behavior as well.
Yes.
So,
and I would take it back to, again, we talked a little bit about resonance, understanding the customer and really what the customer's journey is and who is involved in that journey from the company perspective, because there's a lot of different touch points, right? So if you don't have a shared definition of success, that also is where things start to break down in the customer's buying journey. So
absolutely. Now let's talk about this contrast we just mentioned at the beginning of the show between customer connection and being data driven. Can you share a time when maybe the customer feedback that was received, the in-person context was received, was maybe different than the data that was available, and where that potentially shifted your entire direction? And what did that teach you about balancing, I guess, intuition, you could say, versus analytics?
Okay, I'm going to go way back for this. Hopefully it's still relevant, but we took to market the largest online doctors community before that was a thing. And we were working with the client under the assumptions of doctors would love this thing, right? They were going to be so excited to connect with each other, to share their ideas, to get information. We didn't think enough about their time and all of the pressures that they already have. And this was in the early days of social media, so there was a big educational play. So the immediate reaction from the physicians community was, are you crazy? I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to play on social media. So we needed to understand more of that perspective of how they were immediately going to be overwhelmed because they're already so busy and under so much pressure. But also there was a little bit of, for lack of a better word, ego in terms of protecting what they know. And we had to flip the script for them. We had to show them that sharing what they know or what they're experiencing would benefit them, because the community could also say, yes, I'm also seeing this, and here's what we tried. So it was a real big educational play of what the value of this community could be to a set of customers who are already overwhelmed, full of pressure, and that thought that they had most of the answers.
Yeah, and that brings something really interesting, because back in the day, that protection of knowledge was very powerful. It was a competitive advantage, but that's so readily accessible today. Everything's been democratized, especially with AI.
Mhm.
That the advantage is actually those who can create connection, not those who have the information, because the information is there, it's available. So now the switch has been flipped again. It's like, well,
Yeah,
the bedside manners matter a lot versus what you know.
right.
Nobody cares what you know. All they care about is what are you going to do for me. So let's talk about a little bit, as you help companies with their growth stage. What do you think is the most important business outcome that marketing is expected to influence, and where's work still needed to operate like a predictable revenue engine? That's always been the big dilemma, right? Show me the outcome. Let me see the ROI, tie this effort, not just the metric, into business outcomes. What's still the sort of hard thing that's continuously coming up? And what feels harder than it should right now?
That's an interesting question, because I mentioned analytics earlier, and analytics is right, proving your worth. It's a scoreboard that we look to, we serve up in board presentations after the work is finished. I think that data should help shape the work more while it's happening. I think we got better at that in the last decade. I actually founded a software company in 2013 to try and help score and analyze marketing and PR campaigns, and to give sort of a baseline, like, if you're in this score, this is good, and then here's why. But it was, again, after the fact. And I think part of what we're seeing now, especially with AI, is that the data is changing so quickly. So, for example, yesterday I read an article about Reddit is no longer at the top of the results as a source for LLMs, so large language models like ChatGPT and Perplexity. They've been pulling a lot from Reddit. Reddit's influence has gone down. No one knows why. Maybe they know today. I don't know. I haven't checked the follow-up article in 24 hours. But so I think it's while it's happening, and what's happening with AI is we're all in that space now, right? We're all figuring this out as it's happening. Yes, there are a lot of people that are saying, I have all the answers, or we have a new software tool that we vibe coded and we can solve this problem. But the truth is that AI is changing every day, and even things like analytics. So we've got tools, we've built tools internally, we purchased tools externally to tell us how to influence what's happening in the LLMs, right? So prompt wise, how do we influence the prompts? What do we know about the prompts? What do we know about our brands being named in the prompts, or are they more generic? And how can we get our clients to the top of that? And I'll be honest, every day it's changing. So we all have to work within that environment while it's happening. And it's a new way of marketing, really having to pivot more quickly than ever. Whereas before, again, we're looking at, that was the campaign, here's what happened, here's what we learned. It's like, this is happening right now, here's what we're learning today. We need to be able to pivot. So I think as a whole, marketing and communications leadership have to be able to pivot more quickly than they ever had.
Let's shift a little bit, talk about talent development, retention. What's your approach to developing talent, so not only do they hit performance goals, but stay engaged and inspired? And where do you see leaders struggling the most in retaining top talent today?
Well, right now, again, it's AI fear, right? So your workforce is afraid right now that AI is going to take over their job. And I think making sure that you lead with humanity at the top of what you're doing is important, and how you communicate and demonstrate that on a daily perspective for your workforce. I know that high performing people want three things. They want clarity, they want agency, right, to not be micromanaged, and they want evidence that their work matters. And especially today, people want that even more. Like, I matter more than this AI tool that you could replace me with or try to. You understand that my human judgment comes in and still matters. And together with AI, we will be stronger, better, faster, more effective. but I'm not going to be replaced. So that I think is at the top of the concern list right now. And we're seeing headlines. It's like when a plane crashes, there's a million planes that land every day, but when you see the one that doesn't, that's what sticks in your mind. It's like when you see the headline of Salesforce or some other company laying off a lot of people, AI is in the headline and people don't always pay attention to all the details, and then they start to get scared and presumptuous. So clarity needs to be the main thing that I think leaders offer today. And I actually just talked about this on my podcast with Charlene Lee a couple of weeks ago. She wrote Winning with AI, and she helps leaders to understand how to communicate, how you're going to integrate AI, why it's important, but the fact that it's not going to replace humans and human judgment. And I think she's right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny. The people who created it, they disrupted their own industry. They're the ones who got the most impact.
Right. Yes.
The technology industry has disrupted every industry. And I spent 30 plus years in that industry, right? Every industry disrupted. Travel industry, everything moved to self-managed, self-service, right?
Yes.
Technology, software made all that happen. But AI disrupted its own industry because they're the ones you don't need all the software developers for anymore.
Right.
The
Yes.
other industry that's high touch point between people, please don't replace that with AI. You will fail miserably at that. So,
you'll be lonely at the top, right? Because
absolutely, because connection still matters. But if you're all the software development, you just disrupted your own industry. We in tech disrupted our own industry for the first time, and it's hurt the industry really bad. It's like, oh, we created this to create. No, you created this to disrupt yourself, and now you're hurting from it because you can't figure out how to make it work. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic for another day. We could go a lot deep on that one. Okay.
I want to say one other thing because it does relate to that, which is leaders don't have all the answers ever, but especially right now as we're all navigating this world with AI. So I feel like the job of a good leader is not to be the source of every answer, but it's to continue to build teams of people that can contribute, can make increasingly strong decisions without you in the room necessarily. So empowerment, clarity, and honesty about I don't have all the answers, but together we will solve these is important.
Absolutely. And speaking about being purposeful and empathy and making an impact, how do purpose and empathy shape the way you approach building a market today? And can you share maybe a personal story where your work had a meaningful impact on either a customer or an employee?
My work had a meaningful impact. Well, I think purpose and empathy really begin with recognizing that these are at the end of any campaign or on the other side of your website or whatever are real people trying to make decisions, right? So understanding that regardless of the channel you use to communicate, you're still communicating with another human, whether it's a buyer or an employee. So being purposeful about understanding that and being empathetic to what their problems are. All the stuff that happens in between can be very technical. It can be very channel driven, but making sure that you understand that. I'm trying to think of an example. I'm going to give an example that's outside of the NOVA method. So in COVID, marketing really slowed down for me. So I had been on a board of a snowboarding company, which inspired me to start something similar, which was a paddleboarding company, but I didn't have it fully baked because I still had my day job of marketing. But when COVID happened, the marketing work slowed down. Very quick story. I ended up opening a paddleboard rental, kayak rental, and retail boutique during COVID, and which was kind of the opposite of what everyone else was doing. I had been working remotely since 1998. Now everybody was doing that, and I went and opened a physical shop. But the reason I say that that was purposeful and resonant and had impact is because it allowed people to go out and social distance. I recognize I've got to fast track this because I already had boards made. I had them sitting here. I just didn't have a website. It gave people a purpose to get outside, a purpose to continue to connect with each other, even though they couldn't, they had to keep social distance, and they could do both with this opportunity. So that's not a NOVA method story, but it is one of my entrepreneurial experiences.
I love that.
Spread good vibes. I wanted to get people outside. I wanted to let them still communicate with each other. And I believe we accomplished all of that. And 6 years later, it's still in business. It's a seasonal summer business that I have managers run.
Very nice. Very nice. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all in the people-to-people business. What you use in between to help you with that, all the technology is just a tool. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's people creating services or products for people to consume them. And people can feel connected. They want to feel validated. They don't just want a efficient type of relationship. They want an experience. And I always say, choose relationship over efficiency. Efficiency will destroy your business. It's going to be tempting maybe for a quarter or two. You get some better results if you're a public company, but it's going to cost you. There's a tax that comes with that. And that sometimes can put you way behind your competitors who chose relationship over efficiency.
Right, in the long run. I mean, there are moments when efficiency is important and needed, but if efficiency is the only thing that you're focused on, you're not going to have that long-term impact. Right?
And there's data that shows actually those who choose relationship, choose connection, choose empathy, like leapfrog, outperform everybody else over time. So
I think one thing to keep in mind about that, even with like a customer service team, so there's marketing, there's sales, and there's customer service, is it's much easier to be cruel or angry at a screen than an actual person. So the more human you can make your brand, and I've been saying that for decades now, but even more so today with AI, I feel like people don't want to talk to your bot right now. They like sometimes in some moments efficiency is nice, but overall they're going to connect with and remember your brand more if they know the humans behind it.
Yes, those listening, if you've got all these gatekeepers, AI bots who just question you 4 or 5 times when you're saying, I need to speak to a live agent. No, you can't help me. This is a live agent kind of situation. Please trust the customer. There's a chance they know that it can't be solved by the bots. Okay, and I'm seeing your personal experience on that one.
Right. It sounds a little bit like it. I mean, technology can accelerate communication, but trust still has to be earned. And I don't.
It can also accelerate your distrust of a brand very quickly because it feels like why are you hiding from me? Christine, thank you for joining us on the Marketing with Purpose series of the Bliss Business Podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you with us today.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
I hope today's conversation sparked new ideas for how you can build stronger connections across your teams and even across your markets and create strategies that are not only measurable, but more aligned, more collaborative, and dare I say, more human. If you found value in this discussion, please like, subscribe, comment, share it with others. Keep the conversation going. And remember, great marketing doesn't just perform and sell. It connects and it serves. See you next time.
Thank you.